Like you're tired tonight, Carla.
Tired every night.
Well, you usually sleep for the night, I bet, don't you?
I have a new puppy, so no.
Oh, God. What did you do that for?
You guys are on.
It's adorable.
Thank you for joining tonight's meeting. I'd like to start with a prayer in our pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and deliver us from evil.
Amen.
Amen. I might have messed that up. I just don't know.
Gotta say
I
it.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the council roll call, please?
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr.
Here.
Lynn, not here yet. Mr. Albrecht?
Here.
Mr. Lindeman?
Here.
Mr. Fish-Usher is absent. Mrs. Edichico?
Here.
We're expecting
Oh, he is there.
Tom.
There he is. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
We just
Okay,
took
we
attendance.
Here.
All right.
all in favor of excusing Mr. Fish-Usher from tonight's meeting, say aye.
Aye.
He is excused. We have minutes on our agenda tonight, but because I just sent them out today, I'm going to go ahead and wait 2 weeks for everyone to review, and we'll go through that long list 2 weeks from now. Carla, did you get anything from anyone for audience participation?
No, sir.
No, it's one of the items I want to talk about today. I've been going through like the internet, seeing what other cities are doing. They have a form that you can fill out and send in to their councils that will formulate questions that can be asked. I also sent out earlier today some information about what Mason City Council does for audience participation. They actually open up their chambers with one person to facilitate, and then have the discussion from there with the rest of council at distance. So take a look at that. There's a link there that actually shows how their meeting ran and people asking questions. Are there any communications?
No, sir.
No communications. I will go to council committee reports. Finance Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only thing really on the agenda for the Finance Committee, well, I guess all things are concerned with finances, considering that we're, well, I'm not going to steal any of Mr. Gertz's thunder, but I do think we need to analyze and find out more. We're going to have another phone conference here later on this month, but to determine where we stand financially. But we do have to have the budget submitted to the county so that the Budget Commission can review it. I think if I understand it, I just got it today. I haven't even looked at it. So it was put together by Safety Service Director. I guess it was before he got sick today. And I have not digested it or looked at it at all. So I think we're supposed to have a public hearing on this coming next council meeting, the 21st. And I guess we can act upon it that night. So I guess we could have a first reading on it tonight if we want. And give us each time to look at it. I don't know if any other members of the Finance Committee have looked at it or participated in its preparation. I did not. I was not contacted. I did send an email to this is on a different issue, so that's the budget. So people understand the state of Ohio requires that we submit a budget. And in the month of July for the next year, which is 2021. And the Budget Commission of Hamilton County will review all their 47 jurisdictions, and they will analyze whether those budgets seem reasonable, and ultimately will certify that they agree or approve that budget. Now, budget is what it is. It's not an actual amount of money that we are going to get. It's what we are projecting. And sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less. And that's when we get into the appropriation for the year in usually February or March to actually determine what we think we'll have to spend. So all of us should review the budget. We'll have to vote upon it. I don't know how we're going to have citizens' participation unless we do one of these other gymnastics that Chris is talking about. But hopefully it'll be available at City Hall for people if they want to pick it up. If anyone's interested, they can contact me. I'll give you a copy of my budget. That's projecting so they can review it, any citizen, so they can ask questions on the 21st. That's what the purpose of the public hearing is to allow citizen participation in their thoughts and ideas of whether we should spend money here or there. My primary concern right now is to meet our payroll. The other, I guess, matter would be, as I said, we're going to have a review further of where we stand, and we won't know really our situation, I don't believe, and maybe Mel will address that more in detail when we actually get all of our, or at least the bulk of our returns come in, which was delayed until our tax returns, what I'm talking about, is delayed until such time as I think it's July the 15th or 17th now, I forget which, you can expound on it. Also, earlier, I think I might have mentioned that it's not just the earnings tax. Sabrina did send us all something several weeks ago that it's anticipated, I believe, from the county auditor that we will probably be somewhere between 5 and 10% less than real estate taxes, half of which goes into the general fund and half goes into the capital fund. So we're going to be looking at sharpening our pencils, I think, before we finish out this summer, and we'll know a lot more, I guess, when we determine what we get in actual earnings tax. So I'll leave that up to Mel, as I said. I have other matters I want to talk about, but right now that's all I really have on the Finance Committee. Sorry, Don, you and I did not get a chance to have any meetings with Randy. I don't know of anything that you want to, if you're on the Finance Committee, you may want to add something. I don't know, but go ahead.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, but no, I don't have anything to add. I was wondering when we were going to have that meeting.
Okay, well, that was the other matter too. I have asked 3 different times now, most recently another email to the Safety Service Director. When we get grant money, somebody gives us a grant for some purpose, whatever it may be, the money has been funneled into the FEMA fund, which doesn't make sense to me. That's Federal Emergency Management Fund. And why it was put in there or not, I have no idea. But other than it was put in there at the direction, I believe, from the Safety Service Director, it does not belong there. I think we need to establish a separate fund. I've asked the Service Director 3 times now to provide me with the amounts of various grant monies that have gone in there. Most recently, they took money out of there, I think, and moved it because I guess Duke Energy provided a grant for the rehabilitation of the World War I monument. The other issue I have with that, and I haven't explored it in depth with the law director, but even if we receive a grant, it would be my opinion that it would go into the city's fund, one of the 31 or 33 funds that we have. But before it could be spent, it still should be appropriated and authorized by council. And I don't know, there could be a grant we may not agree to approve or go along with that such a thing. And now I don't know of any off the top of my head because I don't know what grants we receive. But I think that needs to be explored. I hope to get a response. I was going to ask him that tonight if we were going to be at the meeting, but I need to know, or I feel we need to know that what all are the grants that have come in over the last year and a half, and what was the decision to put that all into the FEMA? I don't think it belongs there. Thank you. It's my report.
Yeah, is creating a new fund what you're looking for here?
Well, first I want to find, that's where I'm exploring that, Mr. Nesbitt. I don't know that that would be the answer. I think if a particular grant was for I think he got a grant for something to deal with establishing some kind of committee to evaluate recreation. And then a group was picked. I don't know how the rationale was to pick a group of, I don't know how many's on there, 15 or 20 people. And then they hired the same outfit that did some other work for the city to provide the basis of the study and the report and so forth. But the mechanics of how that's happening and what was done, I was never informed of it. Maybe other council people or city officials are more in line.
Yeah, Mr. Stevenson, how do we go about establishing a fund? Should that be the direction we want to go in? Is that a
Chris,
admin fund?
it's a matter of if we get a grant that's for a specific purpose and we have a fund that matches that purpose, it should go into that fund. If not, it goes into the general fund and gets appropriated as money from the general fund.
So it has to match an existing fund if we get a grant.
No, it doesn't have to match an existing fund. If there is a fund that it does match, it should go into that fund. If it doesn't match one of the existing funds, I mean, if we get a grant for waterworks, say, that should go into the water fund. If we get a grant to do a road repair, that should go into municipal roads or our paving fund. If we get a grant for
Doughboys.
what's that?
Doughboys, 100-year-old doughboys. That should have gone to general fund.
It should have gone into the general fund. It probably should not have gone into the FEMA fund. I don't know why they put it there. I think there was some discussion between the auditor's office and the treasurer's office that I don't know that Mel was involved in, but I think they parked it there, and I don't know why they did that.
Yeah, sounds like they might be parking more funds there just to know where they are and how much they are. But
that FEMA fund was originally leftover money from money we got from FEMA for the 2001 flood. And that money should have stayed segregated, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Mr. Stevenson. You're exactly right. And there have been other monies that I think over the past that are in the FEMA fund. And we've had some ideas of exploring how we could use those funds. Specifically in line of something like the bench we got a grant for. It could have been used for flooding and that type of thing, but certainly a grant that would come through for parks or recreation, or even if you're going to special grant for reconstructing the statue and the doughboy for the World War I memorial doesn't belong in the FEMA fund. And I beg to differ with you. I think it was at the direction of the safety service director. I don't know if it's the auditor or the treasurer or the people there, because I've done a little research on it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Gertz? All right. I want to go ahead and thank Mr. Gertz for his report this evening. The next council report is Utilities, Lands, and Buildings. Chairman, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Chris. I talked to Bennett Kotler the other day, and he assured me that the project down by Riesenberg Lane, the Mill Creek, was on schedule and it would start Monday. I've actually been down there 2 or 3 times myself. I've driven back, and they're excavating a lot of dirt. I'm a little jealous. There's boy, that topsoil looks great. You know, I think anybody that gets that, it's going to be lucky. I wouldn't mind having some myself. Anyway, he tells me that it should proceed now on schedule. I believe he told me it would be about 13 days for the excavation and hauling the dirt away and putting a new some concrete back as a foundation, and then more dirt coming back in. But he said the trees should be planted sometime in this fall, and if you're of a mind to go down there and take a look around, it is a it's a construction site. So you need a hard hat, steel-toed shoes, and all the trimmings. So
Safety glasses.
yes, you just can't wander in and take a look around. You have to have those provisions.
Proper PPE.
Yes. Anyway, so I'm glad to hear that. I'm sure a lot of people, especially Mr. Gertz, the people that are in that floodplain, are excited that this bench project has started, and hopefully it's the first of several that we can accomplish and maybe reduce the cost for the insurance for those people. The other thing is that, what was it, 6 months ago, we voted on the new meters for the waterworks. I talked to actually briefly, the water clerk was driving around up here taking readings, and so that's up and going. She did say that there's some few bugs in it, and those will all be worked out. So that's all for my report tonight.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
Yes, I just want to let you know, I was talking to Daryl today, and he indicated that they were planning on bringing 1,100 truckloads of dirt up to the service department. And so I guess that's where they're going to put it, at least temporarily. And if it's really good dirt, that's great, but that's what they're planning on doing.
That's a little more than what we were told before. I think we were told 800 before. Now it's 1,100.
Well, that's what he said.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad to see it coming to fruition. It's been about 2.5 years. I don't know what took so long, but at least it's starting to happen.
Yes.
I have a lot to do with Bob Ashrock. He did a great job getting that started.
Okay. Anyone else for Mr. Lindeman? Thank you, Mr. Lindeman. Zoning, Planning, and Environment, Chairman, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Chris. I received notice from Amberley Village. There will be a meeting of their Planning Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals in regards to the proposed animal hospital / pet boarding facility that is to be constructed on the north site. This particular site is behind the residences on Maple Drive on the south side in the 700 block. That meeting is tomorrow evening, July 8th, 2020 at 7 p.m. over at Amberley Village Hall. You can participate if you're not comfortable going in person. You can participate via telephone or online. You can contact the clerk of council at Amberley if you'd like to speak out like that, or in person. I assume with the new order that you will be required to wear a mask if you're going to be there. So just wanted to point that out to everybody. That is all I have for the evening.
Okay. That's good information. Thank you, Mr. Powell.
I want to ask Dave a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lindeman.
Dave, I know that you were involved with surveying the school property, the new school.
Yes.
Have you done any surveying at Central or Hilltop?
We did survey work on that. We prepared the initial base maps that they utilized to create the demolition plans. So we have surveyed both the Hilltop and the Central site.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Powell. We will go to Laws and Contracts. Chairman, Ms. Edichico.
Thanks, Chris. The school board voted last week on July 1st to approve the contract for field usage in the stadium. They approved the contract as is, so we are all set for Patrick to move forward with that to get signatures. And so that is done. Other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Okay.
Katie, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I understand that there was something on Facebook from a baseball coach. Did you put that out?
Yeah, I gave you guys all a copy of that at the beginning of the year after parents received it. They had a baseball meeting before all the coronavirus when we thought we were going to have a baseball season. And if you had a kid that was going to play, they had a meeting and they passed out a copy of the letter about the athletic complex at Hilltop. But I didn't make copies for everyone, but I can send them back out.
I would appreciate another copy. Now that you mentioned it, I do recall that. And I didn't put two and two together.
Okay.
The reason, you had it on Facebook or something recently.
Yeah, I think it was a post where somebody was asking what was happening at the properties. So I know there's, a lot of different rumors going around about them. So I thought I could at least squash one of them regarding Hilltops.
Thank you.
I had a question I wanted to ask.
Mr. Gertz?
Are you familiar with Mrs. Adichico? I seem to be on the inside track of this thing with the development of a baseball field up there. I think there's something like $950,000 that the school has banked concerning are you familiar with the details of any of that by any chance?
That's all in the letter that I gave you a copy of at the beginning of the year. I have it somewhere. I can find it.
I'm getting it, frankly. If you could send it again, I'd greatly appreciate it. But I'm told that they're sitting on $950,000 and yet they still owe money. And I don't know. I'd like to see a little more transparency about that and the effectiveness. I think the public would be well informed to be able to be aware, because I understand there was some recent meeting about going ahead or what they're going to do with that and who was there. I don't know. Are you familiar with all who was participating?
Yeah, I have the letter right here. It is from an existing loan that they got in 2012. They still have $950,000 available for use. The money was taken out to repair the roof on the school. It was leaking, sagging, pretty much about to cave in some parts. I believe the intention was to replace the entire roof. But once the bond issue started gaining traction and was eventually voted on, they decided to repair the places that were leaking instead of using what's the point of replacing an entire roof if building's going to be torn down. So they have that money left. It can only be spent on capital improvements at that property. They've tried to talk to the lenders to see if they can use it at the central site, the new school, the stadium. They're not allowed to do any of that. But they did get approval to use that money for an athletic complex at Hilltop. So that is what that money's going towards. It has to be spent at Hilltop. And again, I'll make a copy of this and send it out for you guys.
Okay. Well, it seemed to me that maybe the citizen participation would be greatly involved. To me, it would make sense to not pay off. I mean, to go ahead and pay it on the loan, get rid of the debt, since they're going to be $1 million short or something like that. I don't know all the details of that as well, but I think we need to find out, because there's a discussion of another bond levy, and if before spending money, and they might pay off a debt, sell the property.
You can't use this towards any operations.
Can you let me finish? Let me finish. They ought to negotiate. If they can't pay off the debt with the money, they haven't negotiated a very good contract with their debtor, with their creditor. I understand they still owe about $1.2 million or $4 million, and if they sold the property to get rid of the total debt, maybe they wouldn't be in the financial problems that they have. I think it ought to be explored before they start going out and spending $1 million on another facility when we have Canning Park. It was good enough for Claude Olstein. He played professional ball. And so I really would like to have the school board, if you seem to be in close proximity with working with them, maybe make some suggestions with them, maybe bring the new superintendent down to a meeting, if we ever have a meeting at City Hall, and discuss some of these issues that I think citizens might be interested in. The other thing, we had to have that contract approved by council 3 weeks ago, and they just signed it, and I did check. They haven't paid their bill. They owe us the $25,000 that was due on the 1st of July. We haven't received any money from them. I don't know. Seemed like we had to rush that contract through, but now, they kind of drag their feet again. It gets frustrating for me to see these things happen, Mrs. Adichico.
Okay. Ms. Adichico, you've got a couple of things, I guess, to report back next week on there. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And send out that report to everyone if you would. That'd be great. Thank you, Ms. Adichico.
Thank you.
Service, Chairman, Mr. Albring.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I guess I want to ask again, perhaps a better word might be beg, the administration to seriously consider hiring a couple new people to replace Mr. Boguski and then Mr. Knisner, who just recently resigned. Right now, we only have one mechanic, and he's off on vacation. And we just recently had one of the outriggers go bad on one of our backhoes. Fortunately, Steve Greiner and Ricky Unick both sort of volunteered their time to come down and maybe oversee the repair of that backhoe with the people that we did have. So it's really nice to see that kind of action on those two individuals' part. And again, they were very good employees, and they continue to be, even though they're retired. Again, Daryl has indicated that they're behind on a lot of jobs because they simply don't have the people. I realize we may have money problems or money situations, but I think it's imperative to at least get us back up to where we were, especially in relation to the type of people that we need, which are, again, in this particular instance, is a mechanic. We do have two lists and that we could hire immediately from. So again, I would like to see that proceed as quickly as possible to bring us up to the already understaffed service department. And I believe that's all for tonight.
Has Daryl
Anyone?
asked the administration about personnel?
Well, I think the administration hears Daryl asking for that over and over and over and over and over again. It's every week at their meetings. He's always bringing that up. So I guess it's a question of the will to do it, and also the ability to find the money that would have been spent anyway on the individuals that were in those positions. It's not like we're adding more to the very few that we already had.
You got $111,000 in the stadium fund that can't be spent for anything else. So we could transfer that into the general fund like we talked about, and then he'd have some money to hire some people.
Well, sometimes where there's a will, there's a way.
And sometimes when there's a will, there's no way.
And sometimes where there's no will, there's no way. That's correct also.
All right, thank you, Mr. Albrink, and Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you very much. I am proposing two ordinances on the floor today to basically purchase a lawnmower and 3 drinking fountains for the parks. This is something our committee met on the 21st, and it was on their the list of things that they needed. The lawnmower is used basically to cut the stadium, St. Pierre and Paul fields, as well as around the pool. So I felt, as Mr. Gertz has mentioned before, the stadium fund has some money in it. We talked about it yesterday that I am willing to pull some money if it has a good use. So I feel that pulling some money out of the stadium fund to help purchase this is appropriate. So that is what I'm recommending that we do, and put it in the capital improvement funds, and then buy 3 drinking fountains and the lawnmower. The drinking fountains will be made of cast iron and brass. My understanding, they'll look a lot like the one at Kennick Park behind home plate, just a newer version. There isn't much vandalism to the drinking fountains, what I've been told. They're just breaking down because of old age. It has nothing to do with the vandalism that has happened to the parks already. Most of the vandalism is spray paint and litter. So, and that is not happening to the drinking fountains that we have. I know at this time the drinking fountains aren't working because of COVID, but this is a future plan for the parks, and we're always future forward, planning for the future. So I still think it's appropriate to try to get this done today. And I would appreciate your support on the 2 ordinances on the floor today. Other than that, the pool is open. I hear that the crowds have been very good. There has not been any issues. People have been very compliant with the new rules, bringing their own furniture in and bringing their own food in without glass. And so I've heard that everything's going very well at the pool. And that is all I have for my report today.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Lynn.
I did talk to Mr. Lynn about my concerns, and he's addressed both of those. One was if we can't protect our restrooms from vandalism, how are we going to protect these new drinking fountains? I was hoping that maybe sometime in the future we would still consider putting cameras in the park. And the other concern I had was the coronavirus. What's the point in putting drinking fountains in if there's no way to sanitize them for people to use them? And he addressed that as well, as you heard. So he's answered both of my questions. The only thing is I don't understand why it would be an emergency for drinking fountains. A lawnmower is understandable. That's all I had.
Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, I had a few comments I'd like to
Go
make.
ahead, Mr.
My understanding that the lawnmower originally that was proposed in the neighborhood of $10,000, now it's $16,000, and a 60% increase. I was curious about the numbers, if we have an explanation for that. And also, we have had vandalism in the park. Even one of our citizens did it on Facebook. It totally destroyed a urinal at the Bemis Playfield ballpark restroom there. And I was just talking to a police officer last night. It was ironic. Somebody tried to steal my Trump Pence sign and they caught him. So I told him to tune him out, but I chose not to prosecute him. But nevertheless, I was advised that they have been, there has been, I don't know if they're juveniles, I don't know who they are, but they were throwing fireworks into some of the dumpsters, and one of them was down around Voorhees Park. If you all recall, when 5 or 8 years ago, that whole place burned down, and a lot of it is lack of security. And I am concerned about the security in the parks. It seems like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. I'd like to get a few more answers before we just jump into this ordinance. And I don't necessarily say I wouldn't support it because I do like to support things in the parks, and many of the things relate to in the valley here. But it seems like we may be putting the cart before the horse. I did talk to Mr. Ashrock, an expert in the field that he works concerning security, and there could be an installation at Voorhees Park that would cover the whole park. And also maybe some of the other parks, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 per park. I think we need to make sure our parks are secure. At least they would be video cameras that are, nothing's not destructible, but it's at least vandal resistant. And they would be taking the tape of what would be going on in the parks. And there could be installations of extra more high-powered lighting after the park's closed that would have motion detectors on them that would light up any of the areas. And I think we need to, I'm not on that committee, but I would like to see that explored more aggressively to look into security rather than making investments in other areas of improvements. I don't disagree with Tom. I think we need something new. My understanding is that the mower that we're using needs a lot of repair on numerous occasions, but I don't know why it jumped from 10,000 to 16,000. And I think that we might want to look at, before we do anything, whether it's cameras, mowers, or fountains, we got to hear the Treasury report, and I think we'll know a little more by the 21st to where we stand financially and our ability to pay for these things. I realize there's $111,000 in the stadium fund, but I'm still concerned that that money may be necessary to meet the payroll in the future months. And much as I'd like to see these capital improvements accomplished, I think it behooves us to make sure our employees are paid before we worry about these capital improvements at this time. So I'd like to throw that out there for everyone's thought before we go forward too rapidly.
Oh, in response, in regards to the cost of the mower, there were 2 different versions of mowers that were presented. And talking to the service department, the recreation department, they thought that the one that they have is a Turf Tiger, a 61-inch, 25 horsepower. That is the model of the old one that they had. That felt like if they needed parts, it would be able to be better used because of the old one. So that's the one that they recommended. So that's the one that it is more expensive, but the one that I decided to go with based on the park's recommendation. So that is the reason that we went from another one, which is a Cheetah, I believe, but they're not familiar with that version as much because they've used the other one is like the old version that they have. In regards to funds, I totally agree that we want service people on. I do feel that with the service, there is money. If we get in trouble, there is money in there in the sewer service fee fund. There's also some in the stadium fund left. So I do feel that we should, and from when I'm talking to Patrick, he was talking about not even transferring it from the stadium fund and going straight out of the capital improvement fund, which has over $201,000 in it. So I was finding a way just to make that fund safe and make sure we use the stadium fund, which Tony asked to deplete the other week. So this is something that I thought about and said this was the best way to get it done. So everybody has their opinion, and I respect that, but I'm putting it out there, see if I can get it done for the parks.
I'm not criticizing you. I think you're doing a fine job and you're doing what you have to do for the recreation and parks fund. But I'm chairman of the finance fund, and I'm looking at it from a perspective. I know you put, and I do compliment you. You put these ordinances out a good week ago. That gave us a lot of time to think about it and do a little more research on it. And rather than getting like we did the budget today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or last time we got the contract for the school that the day before. So I do compliment you on that. I just am being more cautious. I don't disagree. I like to see these things accomplished. And yes, we have money in the sewer service fee fund, about $500,000. I don't know if I agree that I haven't talked to Sabrina about the capital fund, because we do have to meet certain obligations through the end of the year. Just because it has a current balance, it doesn't mean we use cash book accounting. So you don't do accrual. And I think if we looked at the accrual accounting, that money is, which means we got to set it aside for future payments. I think we have obligations before the end of the year to pay some things off that $200,000 may be necessary to cover those costs. So I haven't had a chance to cross that with her. I'm more than happy to explore it. But I did tell you earlier that we're probably going to be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 short in our real estate taxes, of which half of that goes to the capital fund. So that doesn't mean that we're going to have the same amount of money come in that we took in last year. Thank you, Tom.
Any other questions for recreation and Mr. Lynn? Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Any new business that anyone wants to talk about? Let's talk about returning to City Hall a little more if anyone wants to. Like I said, I sent out an email with an attachment, a link to Mason City. I also have a copy here on my computer of a form that people can fill out with their questions and send in to the clerk, which seems to be the more common way that's being done out there on the internet. As far as the City Hall, I think Patrick is saying that they're starting to look to go to meetings. I think court's going to be there next week. I'd like to hear what happens at court, see how well that runs, especially with all the social distancing, all the masks for the acoustics we have, the loudspeakers and stuff. See how clearly people can understand what's being said before we make any decision.
Chris, I had a letter inviting myself and other neighbors to a meeting about a situation you're familiar with, the 7-foot fence. I was just wondering how all these people in the neighborhood. Sorry?
Where did you say the meeting was?
City Hall.
City Hall, okay.
I was just wondering how all those people are going to be there, participate with the coronavirus.
Well, that's really up to Patrick at this point, and probably Todd Owens to enforce the occupancy and the social distancing and the mask wearing.
Well, you know, those meetings, sometimes you have one person and sometimes you have 15 or 20 people show up. So I got the letter, and that's why I brought up the question to Patrick about going back to City Hall. Because other meetings, obviously, I mean, 15th of July is only.
Well, all I know is if we have a meeting and we have excess personnel that shouldn't be in the meeting, I'll be asking the Sergeant at Arms, Mr. Fishesher, to escort them out.
The other note
Meetings
on
will have
that,
someone like that too.
the other note that I have is that I don't think that this should be a vote strictly of council, because Carla certainly is affected, Sabrina, Patrick, other people. I think anybody that attends a regular meeting should have a voice in this.
Sure, there should probably be 14 votes. That takes care of staff and council. So,
Well, I think something that we had to look at too, Chris, is, and I want to thank Mr. Feldman. He sent me quite an extensive report from the committee that's reviewing this gas line. And I think he would love to be able to come to a meeting and go into some detail about it. They're changing some of the requirements, or now that I'm talking about moving the gas line from the east side of Market Street to the west side of Market Street, which may entail taking part of right away of the sidewalk area in front of his property. And as a citizen, he's not the only citizen. There's Dwayne Mounts, other ones that like to address council. And I know that they can write letters, or maybe they got this hybrid thing they're doing in Mason. I don't know, but it seems to me there could be a method to return to the council chambers for the benefit of the citizens, so that they can participate in the process and be able to ask questions and have responses. You can write letters and you can do things, but unless you have some interplay of discussion and people's thoughts about how things should impact, it just doesn't work the same. I think you've done a fine job getting this organized, and I thank the ICRC for what they're doing, but it's certainly not the same as having a meeting at City Hall and council chambers, I don't believe.
Brian, can you answer a question? If we have someone that is not really public, like Mr. Gertz mentioned, someone who has some information that we would like to get presented to council, can we send an invite, just like we did with ourselves here, to that person for them to join, and then we can control their activity and how long they are available to be in the meeting, and end their conversation whenever we want to?
Yes, the host of the meeting would have the power to mute and unmute, or to ask people to leave the meeting. I have seen other communities do this as part of committee meetings, to have a guest come in and talk about certain aspects of whatever they're talking about that day. So it's easily done.
So if you have someone, Mr. Gertz, that would like to make a presentation around this, I certainly would be willing to send them an individual Zoom connection and have them join us and control them like a public audience. So.
Well, I think it's all open for discussion. I think we kick it around, but sooner the better. I think that we can get back into our chambers and have an interplay of thinking and personalities and so
well,
forth.
I think there's 14 people that would like to have a weigh in on that, and I think we should look to do maybe a little bit of that next meeting on the 21st. Talk some options and maybe make have a vote, make a motion and have a vote on what everyone would like to do around rejourning back at council chambers. Anyone have a problem with waiting 2 more weeks before we do that, or is that something we want to take a vote on right now with a few people missing?
I would not vote on it right now. I think that you should wait until the 21st, and I would recommend that you not do anything back in council chambers until at least the end of August myself.
Okay, so those
was
are the
on.
kind of things we'll talk about in 2 weeks. Take a look at what I sent out on Mason. Think about this other way to have people attend our meetings. Forms that we can send out that will be sent in to Carla for her to read the question. We can even have Mr. Gertz, you could even show up at City Hall and be the facilitator there at the podium if we want the public to go to City Hall.
Thanks
But
for
the rest of
volunteering me for
council-
a job that I don't want to do. I'd rather have everybody there. So I'll take my own choices to volunteer. I don't need you to volunteer me.
Okay, I just was, if you really want to get into chambers,
Yeah,
I
I
was just making.
want everybody there. That's all. That's my opinion. I just expressed it.
That's fine.
I agree with trying to get the citizens to participate. The Zoom seems to be not the best way to do that. And I miss the audience participation.
Yeah, and I think that's really where this whole focus should be on is how do we get audience feedback and comments, not just to go back to chambers.
Yes,
If there's
I agree.
alternatives other than going back to chambers, we should look at those first, I believe. But we can talk about that next week. Any other business besides that?
I have something, Chris.
Okay, Mr. Powell.
I had a citizen recently reach out to me complaining about speeding on Maple Drive, and it kind of got me thinking a little bit. And then I heard something on the radio the other day that really struck me. It said if we design runways, then people are going to prepare to take off. And why I bring this up now is it's my understanding that we're going to be reconstructing, Thorn Ridge. And part of the plan for it's a street that already has a speeding issue on it. And they're going to widen the street slightly and make it smoother. Well, if you widen it and make it smoother,
Like
what
a
do you
runway.
think is going to happen to the traffic? So I wanted to bring up here, and I will also discuss with the administration that when they're developing their plans to widen the street, I would like them to look into traffic calming measures for that to possibly do things with the design of the road to slow them down. Since they are widening, there will be probably cross sections developed, and there's probably likely something that could be done to maybe try and slow everybody down a little bit, not necessarily with enforcement, but with the design of the street. So that is something I do plan on reaching out to the administration about in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think we have a grant. We're just not allowed to move on it at this point, but that will be coming up, I'm sure.
Well, now would be a good time to do it before.
Before it starts
before
moving,
any
right?
money is spent and any plans are developed, instead of so many times I think council gets presented the plans pretty late in the game, and it's really difficult to have some input on the plans once they're that far along, because there always seems to be a deadline coming up, and you're under the gun to approve it, and I would rather have some input.
I'll make contact with
from it.
Mr. Ross to give us a timeline on what we're looking at so that we can have some of this discussion ahead of that.
I appreciate that, Chris.
Okay. Any other business? Then let's go to reports of officials. We have the law director, Mr. Stevenson.
I don't have a report, Chris. Thanks.
Okay. We have a treasurer, Mr. Gertz.
Thanks, Chris. Early this morning, I sent a copy of the income tax receipt summary to everyone for June. I'll do a high-level review of that now and also give you a quick summary of where we are month to date here in July. But for individual residence income taxes, we collected $98,378, which was $16,714 less than we took in a year ago in June. Year to date, we've taken in $524,958. We're still running about $365,000 behind And as I've stated many times and we've discussed multiple times, the new tax deadline is July 15th of this month. And I'll give you an update on where we are month to date here. So hopefully by the end of the month, we're going to be able to collect a fair portion of that $365,000. If not, we're going to be regrouping, as we've discussed in the past, about how are we going to plug some holes and make payroll and all that sort of thing. So with business profits income taxes, we collected $40,388. That was $47,000 roughly less than what we took in last June. Year to date, we've taken in $207,076, and we're running 145, almost 146,000 behind of where we were at this point last year. And as I've said previously, due to all the COVID-19 situations, that business profit income taxes, we may get a little bit of that back, but I really don't look to get much of that back, of that 146,000. Payroll withholding income taxes, we've collected $441,487. That was $21,718 less than what we took in last June. But overall, it's still not too bad considering everything else that's going on out there with businesses and COVID. So year to date, we're still running behind. We've collected $2,974,782. We're 1.6% behind, or almost $49,000 running behind on payroll withholding income taxes. So in total, for the month of June, we collected $580,253. That is definitely behind where we were last June. In total, we've collected so far $3,706,816, and we're still running 13.1% behind, which equates to a little over $559,000. Now, as I've said, that $559,000, we're hoping to get a chunk of that back with the individual residence income taxes this month, but we'll have to see. Just month to date here in July, just so you know, as of the end of business today, we've collected, let me see here, we've collected $52,657 in the first few business days of July. So that's about little over $32,000 more than we took in at this point last July. So that's encouraging. But and again, so that's kind of the high level numbers for June and where we are month to date here in July. There's a few other things I'd like to mention though. One, as everybody knows, we opened up the offices again here. I believe it was last week, the 28th or 29th, if I'm not mistaken. The offices are open 10 to 3 every day to the public. So that means if you want to come down to the tax department, and we only let in one person at a time into the tax department to talk to our deputy treasurers and finish their taxes or file their taxes. So please, I would really encourage people to plan ahead. You've had 3 months since April 15th, the normal deadline, to get this under control. And we need to get people in there. If you can't make it inside and wait in the line, then there's the drop box outside that we're checking multiple times a day. And our typical turnaround time for the taxes has been roughly 24 hours. So if you put something in a drop box, we're going to have it processed and something back to you the next day is what our goal is. Now, next week, I can give you already a heads up. On the 14th of July, the day before the deadline, there's going to be Mayor's Court, as Dave knows, and we're closing the offices at 1 p.m. because we don't want people to get all merged together with all the people coming into court. So we're closing the tax office at 1 p.m. next Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we're open at 3 and then we're closed. And if you don't pay your taxes by 3, you're going to get a penalty and you're going to be late. So I would strongly encourage people to get their selves organized and get their taxes submitted. You've had 3 months since April 15th, and you got to get this done because, you know, none of us want to be chasing people around for late tax payments. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do. But I don't want to do that. I would encourage people to call us, come to the Dropbox, come into the office. And, you know, we'll do whatever we can to support you to get your taxes filed on time. And other than that, that's all I've really got to report on tonight, unless anybody has any questions.
I do have a question. I know that normally in a normal year, we would be paying this in April.
Correct.
Which when you do that in April, you also are ready, or, you know, you figure out what you're going to be paying for the 4 quarters of the 2020 year. When's
Right.
that first payment going to be due? It would be normally due about July. So what are we just pushing that back 3 months also?
No, I mean, the tax payments for last year, or for 2020, I should say, they're going to be due on the regular schedule. The tax payments for 2019, which were due August or April 15th, that's the one that's delayed. Everything else is still the same as it always is.
Yeah, but you don't usually determine what you need to pay until you fill out the forms for 2019. Should that have already been done?
Well, no, I mean, people should. I mean, we've had a lot of people call in the office about their interim tax, people that pay quarterly. And to be honest with you, most people will pay annually, but we do have people that pay quarterly. And we've had a lot of people calling us and submitting their quarterly payments in based on whatever they made last year. So we're working with people on that. So.
Okay. All right.
Mel,
Any other questions?
Mel, when I looked these over, it looks like we're about a.
We lost you, Mr. Gertz.
Mel?
Yeah.
I said, I looked at the report here that you submitted, and I said, currently, it looks like we're about $500,000 behind last year at this time. Does that sound?
Yeah,
accurate?
559,000.
Okay. And that's why I wanted to make sure we could take a look at it. Hopefully we're hoping we pick up a good bit of that. I think the positive is that the withholding isn't too bad.
No, that's exactly right. But the big chunk, that 365,000 or 364,000 is all individual residents' income taxes. And people have just, you know, taken advantage of the delay, and we haven't had nearly the number of people paying as we normally do. So we hope they all get filed before July 15th. They got another week.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mel.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Mel.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Can you give some rough idea of what percentage of people have already paid and what percentage of people are yet to pay?
I haven't done those percentages, but I could, figure out something there and let you know at the next meeting.
Do you have a guess at all, or?
No, I mean, the guess is in hard dollars, 364,000 that we're behind. So you could do some quick math and figure out, what the percentage is of people that haven't paid. So again,
65.
Yeah, I mean, it's 365,000 behind. So that's roughly 41% behind of where we normally are at the end of June. It's 41%. That's in my report. Now, in terms of individuals, I don't know. This is just in total. So, but if that gives you at least a ballpark.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gertz.
You're welcome.
We have no other administration here, so we will move to the next agenda item, reading of any resolutions.
There are none.
Then we will go ahead with our first ordinance for this evening. Were there any passed at the previous meeting? No, we have only televised meetings now, so forget that stupid question. Go ahead with our first reading.
An ordinance authorizing the auditor to transfer $28,000 from the stadium fund to the capital improvement fund for purchasing a turf tiger lawnmower and drinking fountains for the city parks and declaring an emergency.
I had a quick question, Tom. Do you think 2 weeks is going to make a whole lot of difference or not?
Oh, this is prime grass cutting season. The sooner we get it, the more we'll be able to make sure we take care of the field. So I think it's important to try to get the turf more at this time. And just in response to the cameras, you know that it is something that the committee is interested in, but we tried to get a grant in response to that and couldn't get a grant. The expense of that is a lot more than what I'm asking for here. We purchased things for the police department. We purchased things for the fire, which I feel is very important to do, and I support that. And I'm asking people to support the parks department and the service department by passing this. So
Well, the the fire department, there is a fund we created with, as you're well aware, with
EMS, that would be fire.
yeah,
Correct.
that's an independent fund that I guess it could be used for anything, but we've always designed it. That's money we collect for taking care of all of our paramedic runs and from insurance companies and so forth. But yeah, I do agree that, and I think there has been some grants with the police department. And I also noticed that I don't know that that's paramount, but if I read this correctly, the total is 26,800 that you're asking for, but we're transferring 26,008 versus 20. Is that just to make sure we got more than adequate funds?
Anything that might cost, to order for freight or anything like that.
I tend to want to support this, but I'm apprehensive about the funding, of the rest of the city right now, but that's all. That's the only questions I have.
So,
Hey, Tom, I just wish, the thought, I wish you would have had 2 ordinances. I don't think there's a big emergency for the water fountains, but I agree, it's time for the grass to be cut.
I make a motion to suspend the second and third reading.
Second,
Motion made by Mr. Lynn, seconded by Mr. I think Albrecht that was. No, who was that? Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Now, this is just to move the money from just so I understand this is to move the money from the stadium fund to the capital fund, correct?
Correct.
Not to make the purchase. So
Correct.
again, motion made by Mr. Lynn, second by Mr. Lindeman. Is that correct?
yes.
To suspend the rule, it requires a second and third reading due to the declaring an emergency clause. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That
Motion to
passed.
adopt.
I'll
Motion
second.
to adopt.
Motion made by Mr. Lindeman, seconded by Ms. Edichico to adopt the ordinance. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Ordinance number
2020-28.
All right, thank you.
Next ordinance, an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to purchase a turf tiger lawnmower and 3 drinking fountains and declaring an emergency.
Make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lynn to suspend the rule. It requires a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
No.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That motion did not pass, so we will have only a first reading. Unless I can vote. I'm not sure if I can or not, Dave. Can I? Since we only have six?
You didn't vote when we had a time when you could vote. You passed on that a couple of years ago.
Chris, the only time you can vote is if there's a tie.
Okay. So that is definitely not a tie. So we will have a second reading in 2 weeks.
I had a question. Maybe, Tom, is there a chance? I tend to agree with Mr. Lindeman. It would be 2 weeks, or if we have a special meeting, you can call a special meeting. I think I do want to support the lawnmower and I want to support the parks. I just am worried. I hope you understand that. If we could segregate the two ordinances, possibly we could explore that. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out. Okay.
Well, at least we can move the money.
Exactly.
And have quotes in hand and anticipate possibly doing something like that, or changing the ordinance to have just the one purchase next week or 2 weeks, and water fountains in a separate one.
Chris, I will interject this. I did talk to Mr. Courtney about both of those, the lawnmower and the water fountains, and he supports both of them. But he said that the water fountains probably would not be able or could not be installed until probably the end of summer. So I don't see any urgency to get that passed.
Well, that's true, but we can always pass it and not have an urgency to make the purchase yet either. So, I mean, there's two ways to do that. So,
Right.
But that motion to suspend did not pass. So we will have a second reading in 2 weeks. Our third ordinance.
It should just be a first reading. The following budget for the calendar year beginning January 1st, 2021 has been adopted by council and is hereby submitted for consideration of the Hamilton County Budget Commission.
Okay. This is for the public hearing next week then, correct?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. Yes, I'm sorry.
21st, right.
Right, 21st. So we'll have a second reading that day, and we'll see how that goes. Any other business?
Just mention again, I sound like a broken record, but you know, the VYO didn't have its festival, and the Legion's not having a festival, and both of those organizations would appreciate support. I know that Mrs. Edichico did some kind of a shirt thing for the VYO. It's great, but other people have made cash donations to both the Legion and the VYO, and I would hope that you just continue to remember those two.
Now, the Eagles isn't doing any kind of a breakfast or anything that once a week, are they now? That's been canceled too?
I couldn't tell you. I think
Okay.
Tony's a member.
To my knowledge, they're not doing anything right now as well. And I don't know about the Legion though. Now I'm a member up there also, but I think they were reopening for their club room and so forth, but I don't know the details. But yes, we should. I agree.
They used, you know, in the past, they've had something you could contribute by going and getting yourself a breakfast once a week or something. So
yeah, I think it was once every couple of weeks they had breakfast.
yeah.
I do think that the American Legion, I'm trying to find it, they were planning to have a taste of Reading. I believe it was going to be towards the end of summer for August 29th. I'm not sure if that's still set to go, but they do have that here on the calendar for them.
Okay.
I'm sure Sabrina wants to announce that they are having the market every Friday. I think it's from, 4 to 7.
Yes.
It's still going on. So I
Saw
know
the sign on Reading Road for it.
she works hard.
Reading and Vine. It's on Reading and Vine.
Doing a great job. So I think we try to keep supporting them.
Yep.
And Danny, you do have a lot of tomato plants in, is that correct?
You're going to be selling them, Denny?
No, I don't have them like I used to. I only have about 32 of them.
Remember,
Oh.
we grew up together. And
Some of them are dying. So,
we grew up and been friends for years. Like I told you, I don't like to grow tomato plants.
Then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.